Our next speaker is Adelle Nazarian. She is a political analyst and a geopolitical expert. We're also fortunate to have her as our communications director and in charge of our legislative outreach. Adelle, please go ahead.
That's Adelle.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here today for a really important and historic congressional briefing ahead of a absolutely relevant and hallmark, honestly, of an election that is unfortunately had a very good result. But I'm here today to send a message. I want to address, first of all, members of Congress, individuals who are with congressional offices, distinguished guests and friends. Thank you for the privilege of being here today. I want to begin with the truth that should guide every democracy, every alliance, and every foreign policy decision that claims the mantle of moral leadership. Peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is an environment that allows everyone to flourish, regardless of religion, race, creed, or the social markers that have for far too long been used as dividers. And this message is never more relevant than today, because in Bangladesh, as you know, the very definition of peace is being tested in real time. On February 12th, Bangladesh is scheduled to hold a national election, which is why we're here today. But elections are not just dates on a calendar. They are a measure of whether a state protects its citizens equally, whether law defeats rumor, and whether ballots replace mobs, as we saw, of course, with the lynching of the Hindus recently in Bangladesh. And today we are watching a country of more than 170 million people approach a political cliff. One where democratic form may remain, but democratic substance is being stripped away. Bangladesh's Awami League, the party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who was forced out of her leadership position by a convergence of radical Islamists and a left-wing, largely anti-corruption and anti-government student movement, is barred from participating in this election. Whatever one's view of Bangladesh is, prior political era, when a major party is excluded from the electoral process, the message sent to society is simple and dangerous. Power is decided by force, not legitimacy. And in fragile democracies, when legitimacy collapses, something else rises to take its place. Organized intimidation, sweet power, and movements that do not believe in pluralism as a principle, but tolerate it only as a temporary tactic. That is why this election is not merely a domestic Bangladeshi contest. It is a regional and global security event, because the vacuum of democratic inclusion is where extremist ecosystems thrive. In recent years, Jamaat-e-Islami has demonstrated a type of organizational capacity that matters most in moments of chaos. Its disciplined cadres, its student wings, its welfare networks, and the ability to mobilize at scale. And in July of last year, the Associated Press reported that hundreds of thousands rallied in Dhaka in a show of strength. And we should be clear about what changed. In August 2024, Reuters reported that Bangladesh's caretaker government revoked a ban on Jamaat-e-Islami and allied affiliated groups. This reopened political space, and Jamaat has moved quickly to fill it, because movements with long-term ideological goals do not waste historical openings and opportunities. Even now, Bangladesh's political landscape is fractured. Reuters, for example, reports that BNP leader Tariq Rahman rejected a proposal for a unity government from Jamaat-e-Islami, while describing his party as the frontrunner for February 12th. Yet my own conversations with Bangladeshis living in Scandinavia, the UAE, the United States, and other parts of the world suggest a very different story. They do not see Tariq as one of them, and they see him more as an outsider, telling me that he has very little popular support within their home country. That detail matters. It absolutely matters, because it confirms what many observers already recognize. This is not a conventional election. It is a contest taking place under conditions where the balance of power is shaped not only by campaign platforms, but by who can dominate the streets, who can intimidate, and who can silence. And the silence is already spreading, especially among Bangladesh's religious minorities. When rumors become verdicts, when a whisper becomes a death sentence, Peace is not merely broken, it is replaced by fear. And fear, when weaponized, is one of the most powerful electoral tools in the world. We all know this. In Bangladesh, we have seen what happens when accusation replaces evidence, and when mobs replace courts, and when the state fails to protect the vulnerable. And this is why I'm standing here before you today. So, this moment, as you all know, is not abstract, but it is urgent. And it is preventable, but only if leadership acts. So what should American leadership look like now? Well, first, clarity. The United States should state unequivocally that a credible election requires political inclusion, a free press, and equal protection under law. International observers are a non-negotiable. You cannot claim democratic legitimacy while banning your major political participation and tolerating intimidation. Second, consequences. Words matter, but follow-through matters more. The United States has leverage, diplomatic, economic, and reputational. If the election environment continues to deteriorate, Congress and the administration must be prepared to use tools that raise the cost of political violence and communal persecution. And third, and perhaps most important, equally important, protection. America should press forward and monitor concrete steps by Bangladeshi authorities to protect religious minorities, prosecute mob violence, and prevent vigilante enforcement. This is not about taking sides in Bangladeshi politics. This is about defending the most basic promise of any state, the equal protection of its citizens. Jamaat-e-Islami's imminent rise is a grim irony for a nation born of a bloody war for independence and built through a hard-won economic progress. Bangladesh has been moving imperfectly but steadily toward greater self-reliance and development. Under the previous administration, that is. Handing the keys to an Islamist movement that thrives on ideological control would not correct course. It would only drag the country backwards. We have seen this movie before. It reads like the Iranian Revolution of 1979. A modernizing state destabilized by an alliance of radical Islamists and Marxist student factions, culminating in the removal of the Shah and the installation of a murderous Islamic theocracy. Sheikh Hasina's ouster, under similar pressures, should set off every alarm bell. And then there is a U.S. national security dimension that Americans cannot afford to ignore. Atayed Ullah, the name sounds familiar? The Bangladeshi national and U.S. permanent resident who carried out the ISIS-inspired pipe bomb attack in New York City, in the New York City subway system on December 11, 2017. It's a reminder of what ideological radicalization can metastasize into when exported across borders. And mind you, the United States is home to one of the largest Bangladeshi diaspora communities outside of Bangladesh itself, which means instability and extremist capture abroad reverberate here at home. This isn't Islamophobia. It's sober realism. You can respect Muslims, defend religious freedom, and still call out Islamist movements for what they are. Political projects that weaponize faith, crush dissent, and erode pluralism, often with consequences that don't stop at their own borders. And I live and spend a great deal of time, obviously DC is my home base, but also in the UAE and Dubai, and I can tell you that it's truly, as Michael Rubin said before, a model, an exemplary model for a nation and how it respects religious minorities while being majority Muslim, and it's a beautiful thing. So, to the members of Congress, to those who are, we thank you for being here from the congressional offices to represent the members of Congress. I'm asking you to act in a way that history will recognize as responsible leadership. Request an urgent hearing by the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the pre-election security environment and minority protection. Engage publicly and privately to insist on political inclusion and the rule of law. And make clear that violence, incitement, and intimidation will affect how the United States evaluates Bangladesh's relationship going forward. And to the diplomats here today, this cannot be a solitary American message. It must be an international expectation. If democratic nations do not defend pluralism when it is hard, then pluralism becomes a slogan rather than a standard. Because what happens in Bangladesh does not stay in Bangladesh. It's not like Vegas. Bangladesh sits at a strategic crossroads in South Asia. Instability there will ripple outward, affecting India's eastern flank, border dynamics, refugee pressures, and the broader security picture in the Bay of Bengal. And when organized Islamist currents gain state influence in one country, their ideological and operational echoes rarely respect borders. Let me speak plainly. This is not a question of whether Bangladesh is important enough to merit attention. Bangladesh is already important. It is already central, economically, geopolitically, and demographically. The question is whether the world will treat the February 12th election as a technical event, something to observe, or as a defining moment to shape. Because if we normalize elections without inclusion, we normalize governance without consent. If we normalize violence against minorities, we normalize the idea that some citizens are protected and others are expendable. And if we normalize the quiet erosion of secular foundations and pluralistic safeguards, then we should not be surprised when the next crisis arrives, not suddenly, not anything like that, but steadily, through institutional capture, intimidation, and the gradual replacement of law with fear. I want to end where I began. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of dignity. The presence of equal protection, the presence of a society where people are not hunted for what they believe in or silenced for who they are. Bangladesh deserves that peace. Its minorities deserve that protection. And its citizens deserve an election that is more than theater. And the United States, together with partners who still believe in pluralism, has the capacity, and I would argue the responsibility, to raise the cost of intimidation and lower the temperature of hatred. This is not charity, it is strategic. It is leadership. And it is the defense of the democratic principle itself. Thank you.